Today is the 41st Dr. A.M. Aziz Memorial Oration to be held today, and in order to commence proceedings, we will have Qiraat followed by Khatamul Quran and Dua by Al-Hajj Qari M. Faisal Hassan Alim Qadiri.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. والذين جاءوا من بعدهم يقولون ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. صدق الله العظيم. Assalamu alaikum. Very special day for that our Dr. A.M. Aziz Foundation 41st memorial year of this, and dear President of the Dr. A.M. Aziz Foundation and at the All Ceylon YMMA conference, and especially the principal of Zahira College, Mr. Tizi Marikar, and other ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum again. Allah Ta'ala asks us to make dua for who help us for the society and other good deeds. Earlier we cited that Qiraat, in that Allah mentioning in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. And those who came after them submitted, O our Lord, forgive us and our brothers who preceded us in faith. Do not leave a grudge to remain in our hearts towards those who believe, our Lord. Surely you are kind and merciful. It means in tafsirs they are mentioning it is thus of great importance for us to always remember our deceased and make sincere duas for them after they have passed from this world. We should always make Khatam Sharif or Fatiha and send the reward of this the soul of our marhooms. It means believers until the day of judgment, this is their practice. It means for all the noble companions and the Ansar and all other illustrious predecessors from this emerge two issues. Do not pray for yourself only, but include these illustrious predecessors in your prayer. The Khatam of Fatiha of the pious souls, especially the noble companions and the family of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and our noble acts, because in these there is a prayer for them, and who did good things to the society as Salihins, Allah accept theirs all good things and reward them. Therefore we have to pray. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. آمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين وزيده واعف عنا يا كريم يا رحيم يا الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وصحبه عدد ما في علم الله صلاة دائمة بدوام ملك الله. آمين. اللهم ارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وخطايانا كلها يا رب العالمين. آمين. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك وطاعتك وإيمانك وإسلامك ومحبتك وشوقك ومعرفتك ورضاك يا الله. آمين. اللهم اغفر له ورحمه. اللهم اغفر له ورحمه. اللهم اغفر له ورحمه ونشى الله وحشته ونور الله ضريحه وتقبل الله من حسناته وتجاوز عن سيئاته وغفر الله ذنوبنا وذنوبه في جنات النعيم. اللهم اجعل قبره روضة من رياض الجنان ولا تجعل قبره حفرة من حفر النيران. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Ya Allah, all praise be to Allah, sustainer of the worlds, and may the blessings and peace be upon His honorable messenger, the master of prophets, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on his family, Ahlul Bayt, and all of his companions and all of us. Ya Allah, we beg you to make best our achievements, to make best our acts, to make best our deeds, and to make best our inside and our outside. We beg you to put us on the highest level in heaven. Ameen. Ya Allah, we beg you to raise our remembrance, to remove our burdens, to make good our affairs, to purify our hearts, to enlighten our heart, and to forgive us our sins. Ya Allah, we beg you to put us on the highest level in heaven. Ameen. Ya Allah, we beg you to bless us, bless our hearing, bless our eyesight, bless our soul, bless our body, bless our manners, bless our families, bless our lives, bless our every work and accept our good deeds. We beg you to put us on the highest level in heaven. Ameen. Ya Allah, especially that marhum, Ya Allah, let his sins be forgiven and save him from the torment of the qabr. Make his qabr spacious and bright, and make him to cross the bridge of Siratul Mustaqim with ease and enter heaven, Ya Allah, to Jannatul Firdaus with the shafaat of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Allah, grant us long life, good health, strength, and good character. We plead you to, Ya Allah, don't make us to act disobediently to you. Ya Allah, guide us to be obedient to you and help us to do good deeds. Ya Allah, make our names to enter of your Salihins name list. Ya Allah, accept this majlis and send your rahmat as rewards to do more things to the society. Ya Allah, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر لنا وارحمنا ولوالدينا ربنا رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. صلى الله على محمد. يا السلام عليكم.
That was Qiraat recited by Al-Hajj Qari M. Faisal Hassan, Alim Qadri, followed by Dua. Ladies and gentlemen, this function is organized jointly by the Dr. A.M. Aziz Foundation and the All Shalom YMA Conference. I wish to invite Mr. S.H.M. Jamil, President of the Dr. A.M. Aziz Foundation, to address you.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Our distinguished guest, Mr. A.I. Marekar, who is here on our invitation to make the oration on this A.M.A. Aziz Commemoration Day. Mr. Tahasim, President of the YMMA Conference, Mr. Trisby Marekar, Principal of Zahra College, Colombo, who has made us excellent arrangement for this meeting, Mr. Khalid Farooq, Secretary of the Dr. A.M.A. Aziz Foundation, and Mr. Balasingham, a committee member of the Dr. A.M.A. Aziz Foundation, members of the family of late Dr. A.M.A. Aziz, his students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. A.M.A. Aziz passed away at a very young age of 62 in 1973. Now, after so many decades, we are all assembled here to remember and leave for posterity the contributions made by such a great man. I need not say much about him at this time because I have been saying that for the last several years, and we have been publishing books on him. And today also, we are releasing 2 books, one in English, one in Tamil, of the marvelous contributions made by Dr. A.M.A. Aziz. The Memorial Committee was formed in 1975 by the YMMA Conference on the initiative of late Mr. Kamaldeen, a very close associate of Aziz and a teacher, who subsequently helped hundreds of students to become efficient librarians in this country. From that time onwards, there have been annual orations, articles in papers, radio speeches, and many other activities in memory of Dr. Aziz. A scholarship fund to the university students was started when Deshamani Furqan was the president of the association, and since 2007, we have started on a process of publications bringing out all the writings and speeches of A.M.A. Aziz, on A.M.A. Aziz, and about A.M.A. Aziz. I am glad to mention at this point that since 2007 we have brought out 11 publications other than the orations on A.M.A. Aziz. But there are 2 main reasons. One is the initiative and the dedication shown by his students and the members of the A.M.A. Aziz Foundation. And more important than that, Dr. A.M.A. Aziz, from his young days, has preserved every piece of paper that he came across in connection with the work, and they have been well preserved by his son, Muhammad Ali Aziz. That is the main reason why we are able to bring out all the publications for the simple reason they were all have been preserved carefully by his son, Ali Aziz. So we thank and congratulate his son. In Tamil, there is a Kural, Tirukkural. Indra Polidil Tan Mahane Sandron and a Kerta Tai. And another one, ஒரு தந்தை மகனுக்கு காட்டும் ஒரு தந்தை மகன் காட்டும் செயல் இவன் தந்தை என்னோட்டான் எனும் கொல். That is praising the father. That means the greatest contribution a father could give a son is to be in the forefront of serving the other people. And the greatest contribution a son can give to a father is to be said, what a wonderful son he has produced. So I think that fits into Mr. Ali Aziz. And more important than that is the support, cooperation, and the financial assistance given by his students, his family, and the well-wishers, and various other sources. In fact, it is Mr. Aga Bari who gave the contribution of 100,000 rupees for the first publication and started the website as well. I am mentioning all these names on this platform to show how a few individuals can make the society rise up. Their credibility helps to run an organization. Therefore, it is the goodwill, support, and cooperation of everyone. For example, the electronic and the print media. We find the article and the news item appears in 11 daily papers in this country within the last 1 week. What a wonderful support they are giving us. Zahra College principal and the staff, the YMMA, and the family. Therefore, I do not want to make a president's address. I only want to welcome every one of you and thank you for all what we are able to do with your help, support, and assistance. Therefore, we welcome every one of you, because if the A.M.A. Aziz Memorial Committee at the beginning and subsequently the Dr. A.M.A. Aziz Foundation are able to contribute to perpetuate the memory of A.M.A. Aziz, it is not an individual task. It is a group task by the A.M.A. Aziz Foundation with the support of everyone. And we hope this trend will continue in the future as well. As I mentioned, everything is mentioned in the books of A.M.A. Aziz and various other ones. They have some wonderful photographs. So if I start talking on Aziz, that may affect the sale of the books. Therefore, we wish that every one of you buys all the copies of all the books, the 11 books that have been published, and encourage the A.M.A. Aziz Foundation and the YMMA, because he who started the Muslim Scholarship Fund, he who started the YMMA conference, he made his maximum contribution for the development of Zahra College after Dr. T.P. Jaya as a chosen successor of Jaya. He wanted to start a cultural center as a prelude to the Muslim Cultural University. And one of the finest contributor to the speeches in the Senate. Therefore, we welcome every one of you who have come here to honor the memory of Dr. A.M.A. Aziz and expect the entire cooperation in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jamil. You heard the president of the Dr. A.M.A. Aziz Foundation, Mr. Sicham Jamil, giving details about the life and times of Marhum Dr. A.M.A. Aziz. There were two organizations Marhum Dr. A.M.A. Aziz had very close to him. One was Zaira College, the other one was the All Ceylon YMA Conference, which he founded in 1950. I wish to now invite the President of the All Ceylon YMA Conference, Mr. M.T. Thasim, to deliver his address.
Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, most merciful. My co-chair, Mr. S.H.M. Jamil, President of the A.M.A. Aziz Foundation. Guest speaker, Mr. A.I. Marika, Principal of Zahra College, Colombo. Mr. Trizvi Marika, Mr. Khalid M. Farooq, the Secretary of the Aziz Foundation and past President of All Ceylon YMA Conference. Members of the Executive Committee of All Ceylon YMA Conference and executive members of the AMA Aziz Foundation. Distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. As the National President of All Ceylon YMA Conference, I am indeed privileged to deliver the welcome address on behalf of All Ceylon YMA Conference on the Aziz Day commemoration. I warmly welcome you all for this august occasion. I am indeed happy to state that All Ceylon YMA Conference, since its inception, has been marching forward and very active, working hard towards the welfare and betterment of our community. The All Ceylon YMA Conference is the premier Muslim community-based and youth-serving organization in Sri Lanka, coordinating a network of nearly 100 branches spread throughout the country. It is incorporated by Act of Parliament number 31 of 1968 and recognized as an approved charity by the Ministry of Finance. The scope of activities encompasses a multifaceted range. These include Islamic, religious and cultural activities, education and granting of scholarships, poverty alleviation and socio-economic development, vocational training, youth development, refugee and disaster relief and rehabilitation, health and environment, education, medical camps and anti-drug program, social integration, youth empowerment, Muslim law reforms, human rights and social justice program, etc. The YMMA conference was established on 30th April 1950. During the course of the last 64 years, it has served the Muslim community and country in numerous ways by promoting activities in every field of endeavor, while contributing to the building of healthy, vigorous and intelligent youth movement. It has infused into our young men a sense of dedication and service to the community and country. It has spotlighted the poverty and illiteracy among the large sections of our community and endeavored to minimize these by practical and realistic measures in various other ways. It has raised the status of the people of this country in equal terms to build a united, happy, peaceful and prosperous Sri Lanka. The government of Sri Lanka, in recognition of its yeoman service rendered by the All Ceylon YMA Conference to the community and the country, issued a commemorative postage stamp on the occasion of its Golden Jubilee celebration in the year 2000. This great institution was founded by none other than Marhum A.M.A. Aziz, May Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah shower his blessings upon his family members. Finally, I warmly welcome you for this memorial oration where the guest speaker, Mr. A.I. Marika, will speak to you on the subject Islamic Banking, Alternate Approach to Finance. Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Mr. Tasim. You heard the National President, Mr. Tasim, delivering his address. The next item on the agenda is the memorial oration to be delivered by Mr. A.I. Marika, who is a retired banker and consultant in Islamic finance. To introduce our guest speaker, I request Mr. S.H.M. Jamil to introduce him.
I am very glad to welcome Mr. Ananda Sangari, a distinguished old boy of Zaira College, and in a recent speech, he has said that it is Zaira College that molded him to this present position. Thank you. I shall now introduce the speaker. Mr. A.I. Marekar was born in Negambu and had his education at Maristal Law College, Negambu and Zaira College, Colombo. During the Aziz era, some of us here were his contemporaries at Zaira College and at Peradeniya University. In fact, two of us who are seated here on the stage, myself and Khalid Farooq, were classmates for a long time at Zaira College. He graduated from the University of Ceylon in 1965 and is an associate of the Chartered Institute of Bankers in London. He commenced his banking career at Greenlace Bank, Colombo, and left in 1979 to join the Saudi British Bank in Saudi Arabia, where he held senior positions. He returned in 1989 and held high posts at Emirates Bank, Middle East Bank, and Muslim Commercial Bank. In 1997, when Amara Investments Limited was inaugurated as the pioneering Islamic financial institution in Sri Lanka, Mr. Mareka joined them as the first managing director. He contributed a great deal to this organization and left their services in 2004. As an authority on Islamic banking, he contributed a great deal in formulating the course of studies in Islamic finance and banking when the Faculty of Islamic Studies and Arabic was established at the Southeastern University of Sri Lanka. He is a visiting lecturer also. I may mention that Dr. Shukri and myself too, as Zahirians and students of Aziz, were closely associated with the establishment of this faculty at the Southeastern University along with Mareka. Mr. Mareka's advice as a consultant in Islamic banking was sought after by many banks and finance companies who have introduced such facilities. Now, I invite Mr. Mareka to deliver the oration. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters in Islam and in humanity, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are gathered here today to pay tribute to a very rare personality, a visionary, an erudite scholar, an educationist, a senator, and an administrator par excellence. These words fall far short and are grossly inadequate to describe the profound contribution made by Dr. A.M. Aziz to Sri Lankan Muslim society. Dr. Aziz was a principal at Zahira College, Colombo, when I was a student here in the late 1950s. I vividly remember the Monday morning school assemblies he conducted, where he addressed the students standing almost at the same place where I'm standing now. He spoke with great dignity and aplomb. As a mature student, listening to his enlightened discourses, I and my contemporaries like S.H.M. Jamil, Khalid Farooq, Dr. Shukri, Maki Hashim, Dr. Neville Edrisinghe, Dr. Amir Ali, K. Cheng Nakba, and many more, were not just mesmerized by what he said, but were humbled by his sheer presence and walked back to our classrooms silently saying to ourselves, what a great man. I thank the Dr. A.M.A. Aziz Foundation for inviting me to deliver the Dr. Aziz Memorial Oration this year, which is a great honor, especially to Ali Aziz, who has been a very close friend of mine for over 50 years, both personally and professionally. The topic of my talk today is Islamic banking. This alternate approach to banking is sweeping across human societies worldwide with the ferocity of a financial tsunami. Banking circles, financial regulators, and the world of business and finance started a serious dialogue on this emerging banking initiative only during the last 25 years. National Development Bank launched the Islamic Bank unit on the 16th of August 2014. It all seems very new. As a professional banker and as a Muslim, I place the launch date of Islamic finance approximately 1,450 years ago, when two great personalities in history, Muhammad ibn Abdullah and Lady Khadija, may Allah's mercy be on them both, prototyped the very first working model of a Mudharaba. At this moment in history, Lady Khadija partnered with Muhammad ibn Abdullah, may peace be upon them both, and they launched a unique business model with Lady Khadija as the Rabbul Mal, investing money in a partnership business venture managed by the Mudharib, the experienced caravan trader Muhammad ibn Abdullah, may peace be upon them both. The essential ingredients of Islamic banking, such as asset-based banking, asset-based finance, use of expert funds managers, the Mudharib, profit-loss sharing, not just sharing profits, profit and loss sharing, the fusion of capital and enterprise for profit generation, profit instead of interest being used as a pricing tool, have their genesis in this prototype business model, which started 1,450 years ago. This business model continued to be used unchanged for over 1,450 years and remains as the bedrock principle of Islamic banking even today. At a global level, Islamic banking is no longer an embryonic initiative. It has etched a very strong presence in the world of banking and finance, spreading across many continents, from the Americas to the Far East, from Northern Europe to South Africa, and in many countries in between. The Gulf countries, together with Malaysia, took a lead role in transforming the financial landscape by establishing strongly capitalized Islamic banks in their respective regions. The Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions in Bahrain pioneered the setting up of the procedural framework for Islamic banking by compiling very comprehensive accounting standards and processed Sharia standards. These developments enabled Islamic banks to reach out to client needs globally. Islamic banking is big business worldwide. It has touched the US $1.5 trillion mark today in incepted business and is reported to be growing at 20% every year. There are over 1,000 institutions all over the world offering Islamic finance, and it has a strong presence in nearly all the major world financial centers. Coopers estimate the global market capitalization of Islamic trade and finance at US dollars 21 trillion, not 21 billion, 21 trillion. To place this figure in perspective, it is worth pointing out that global GDP is only around US dollars 25 trillion. The global market potential for Islamic finance is therefore of mega proportions. In Sri Lanka, we have been quite proactive in accepting, developing, and launching Islamic banking. The first standalone Islamic financial institution made its debut in 1997 with the setting up of Amana Investments Limited. And the major milestones in the development of this industry were achieved rapidly within a space of less than 15 years. The Banking Act was amended in 2005, as a result of which, for the first time in the history of banking in Sri Lanka, Islamic banking was legalized and the central bank became responsible for the regulation of Islamic banks and Islamic finance and leasing companies. This led to a rapid proliferation of Islamic banks in the country. Amana Bank was licensed in 2013, and almost all the major conventional banks have set up Islamic banking divisions during the last 2 years, including Banker Ceylon, People's Leasing, Commercial Bank, HNB, NDB, Ceylon Bank, MCB. Many finance companies and leasing companies also set up Islamic finance divisions. LOLC is a leading player in Islamic finance in the leasing sector. The potential market size for Islamic finance in the country is estimated to be in the region of 250 billion rupees, not million, 250 billion, of which incepted business by all Islamic banks is around 50 billion during 2014. These are impressive achievements, and the growth surge continues. The journey of the Islamic banking initiative in Sri Lanka so far has not been an easy one. The label Islamic has led many Muslims and non-Muslims to think that this is part of the revealed body of faith of the religion of Islam, which should concern only the devout Muslim. The system of Sharia-compliant banking, after all, is based on Quranic law. And Sharia-compliant banking, they contend, is an extension of the Islamic religious law. They question both the need, the relevance, and the applicability of Sharia to modern-day banking, which is by and large based on common law. This misconception needs to be demystified. Sharia is an Arabic word, lexically meaning road or pathway. It's a term used to denote a body of law which is used for the purpose of guiding human society and is essentially legal in nature and content. Broadly speaking, Sharia is classified into the 5 following compartments: Sharia Ibadat, Sharia Khilafat, Sharia Imarat, Sharia Muasharat, and Sharia Muamalat. From the perspective of religious dogma, hardcore religion is found almost in its entirety in Sharia Ibadat. All other areas of Sharia are focused on best practices for the survival and existence of a peaceful and healthy human society. The rules of good governance, the rights and obligations of rulers are copiously detailed in Sharia Khilafat. The rights of the governed, their obligations and their role in society are found in Sharia Imarat. Rules regarding family matters such as rights of children, marriage, divorce, inheritance, etc. are specified in Sharia Muamalat. Sharia Muasharat, matters concerning trade, finance, and related matters such as contracts, debts, guarantees, pledge, trusts, etc. are comprehensively covered in Sharia Muamalah. What I wish to emphasize is that 1/5 of Sharia is about religion, and 4/5 of Sharia is about rules for the well-being of human society. Sharia, therefore, is a body of law. It's about jurisprudence. It's therefore legal system. This leads me to the next misconception that many people have on the compatibility of Sharia with common law, especially in the context of Islamic banking. Historians who researched the evolution and development of common law hold the view that common law as we know it had its origins in the 17th century in the writings of the eminent Dutch jurist Hugo Grotius, 1583 to 1645. His book, The Laws of War and Peace, which he released in 1625, is thought to be the foundation of modern law. Hugo Grotius, however, never claimed to be the original author of all the legal principles. He never claimed that. Propounded in his writings, these, he said, were the laws of mankind which evolved over time. Hugo Grotius drew inspiration from the vast bodies of laws that pre-existed his time and extracted principles of law and gave them focused expression in his writings. Hugo Grotius and other eminent jurists of his vintage were strongly influenced by laws that were practiced by early civilizations, such as the laws of the Phoenicians, 2000 BC, the laws of the Babylonians, 500 BC, which saw its high watermark in the compilation of Hammurabi's Code in 55 BC, the laws of the Mesopotamians, 1500 BC, the laws of the Romans and the Greeks, 1000 BC. Hugo Grotius was also strongly influenced by another body of law, which to him was more state-of-the-art, and this was Sharia. Sharia was propounded around 700 AD, and unlike the laws of the earlier and older civilizations, which are all of the era BC, Sharia was the only body of law belonging to the era AD. In addition to that, by the 17th century, Islamic jurists had researched extensively and had written copiously on a wide spectrum of topics which very strongly influenced Hugo Grotius and the other 17th century jurists. The compilers of modern law were so strongly influenced by Sharia that there is a large component of commonality between the substance of Sharia and common law. It would be very appropriate at this stage to quote what an eminent non-Muslim jurist, Justice Veeramantri, had to say about Sharia. Justice Veeramantri, as you may know, is a retired Supreme Court judge of the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. He was a professor of law at Monash University. He was also the senior vice president of the International Court of Justice in The Hague. An erudite scholar, he has authored several books on law and related subjects. In his book, Islamic Jurisprudence, he begins the first chapter titled Sharia with the following words. I will quote verbatim to you. Although the Islamic system of jurisprudence is one of the best developed and the most adequate systems in the world, very little is known about it by Western law students. I repeat, he says, this system of jurisprudence is one of the best developed and the most adequate systems. This is said by a non-Muslim eminent jurist, Justice Veeramantri. When we speak of Sharia-based principles, we are also talking about common law principles. Both bodies of law are identical in substance, and the few differences that may appear to exist are on matters linked to ethics and transparency, on which Sharia is uncompromisingly stringent. Let me summarize what I have said about Sharia. Sharia is not entirely a religious dogma. It is a body of law which has strongly influenced common law, and in substance, common law and Sharia share a large area of commonality. When we say that Islamic banking is Sharia compliant banking, what we are really saying is that it is based on the same legal principles which govern modern day banking, but practiced within the contours of transparency, ethics, justice and fair play. Let me talk to you about Islamic banking. But before doing so, it will be useful to state in summary what conventional banking is all about. Conventional banking is debt-based banking. The primary function of a conventional bank is to give loans to clients who then become in-law debtors. They are debtors in law. A debtor has a legal obligation to repay the debt together with interest and provide, if so requested by the creditor, adequate security for the protection of the debt. When banks give loans, the bank is the creditor and the borrower is the debtor. On the side of deposit taking, when a customer deposits money in a current account, a savings account or a deposit account, the customer is legally the creditor and the bank is legally the debtor. The singular relationship that a conventional bank has with its clients, therefore, is that of a debtor and a creditor. Interest paid and received in conventional banking is in the nature of a rent or hire for using money, arising from the principle accepted in conventional banking that money has usufruct. Islamic banking takes a very different route. It centers around the principle that money by itself has no usufruct and therefore cannot generate a surplus. Money by itself has no usufruct, it therefore cannot create a surplus by itself. From the Islamic banking standpoint, money can generate a surplus only, repeat, only if it is combined with effort, enterprise and risk bearing. This was clearly demonstrated in the business model prototyped by Lady Khadija. Lady Khadija's capital was combined with the effort and enterprise of Muhammad ibn Abdullah, may peace be upon them both, and both agreed to share profits and losses. This is the principle of the Mudaraba, which is also at the very foundation of Islamic banking. Loss sharing by all transaction-linked stakeholders is a non-negotiable principle in Islamic banking and is the fundamental difference between Islamic banking and conventional banking. In conventional banking, providers of capital, the depositors, are not loss sharers and are not legally entitled and are legally entitled for the guaranteed repayment of capital together with interest. Operating losses are the total responsibility of the bank. Let us look at how Islamic banks translate into modalities of bank finance the core formula of fusion of capital, effort, enterprise, and sharing of profits and losses in business. The Lady Khadija business model has shown us the simplicity of this approach. Business and trade as practiced by mankind from very ancient times were always based on the integrals of the Lady Khadija business model. Trade and business is all about combining capital with effort and enterprise. The results of such an initiative is at the end of the venture is the generation of profit or loss, which is shared by the entrepreneurs. The financial re-engineering that Islamic banks therefore have to undertake is simply to use a trade-based platform for the disbursement of money and to build into business processes standard practices followed by traders and businessmen. Some of these universally used business platforms are trade, which is buying and selling, partnership business, including venture capital, leasing, project finance, including agriculture finance, etc. And Islamic Murabaha is a platform used to facilitate the buying and selling needs of traders. Musharaka is a partnership finance. Ijara is Sharia compliant leasing. Salam and Istisna are very versatile platforms for financing startup projects and for providing agriculture finance. The range of products in Islamic finance is endless. The potential for re-engineering modalities of Islamic finance is wide and unlimited. Limitations in human ingenuity is what actually determines the horizons of Islamic financial product development. Another attribute of Islamic banking which differentiates it from conventional banking is the asset-based nature of every transaction. Sharia injunctions require that financial transactions must be accompanied by an underlying productive activity. Islamic banking is asset-based banking and is therefore trade-based. This means that such an approach must have an asset at its core and it must be the sole rationale for the transaction. The asset must be tangible, must be useful to human society. By extension, therefore, Islamic banks define their role as funds managers entrusted with the task of garnering surplus, unutilized public funds, and channeling it to useful commercial activities for the betterment of human society. A conventional bank has debt at its epicenter instead of an asset. The main focus of a conventional bank is to disperse loans and recover them and levy interest for hiring out money. Let me illustrate this difference with an excellent example. We have all heard about derivatives, which many of us think is a high-end financial instrument marketed by banks and financial institutions. It is projected as a state-of-the-art and proudly proclaimed as a universally accepted panacea for many of our financial woes. A derivative, as the name implies, is an instrument derived from another transaction. That's why it's called a derivative. A derivative, it is therefore not a standalone commercial deal. It is a parasitic instrument totally lacking any tangible substance. The market hype created by vendors of this instrument has been so powerful that its market presence today is in the region of US dollars 600 trillion, not 600 billion, 600 trillion dollars. This financial behemoth obviously has no asset base or any commercial use, for the simple reason that global GDP is only a minuscule US dollars 25 trillion. Global GDP is 25 trillion, and here we have a financial instrument which has a total market size of 600 trillion. The 600 trillion US dollars in derivatives represents nothing, I repeat, nothing on planet Earth. Derivatives are essentially speculative, and the word that we commonly use for describing such activity is gambling. Islamic jurists have declared derivatives a haram instrument. In addition to the total absence of an asset base, derivatives also suffer from other multiple Sharia prohibitions such as maisir, gambling, and garrar, uncertainty. The dangers of using financial instruments which do not have an asset base, especially those which are speculative in nature, such as derivatives, were clearly shown in the recent global financial market meltdown. It demonstrated very cruelly that assetless toxic instruments can bring about the collapse not only of giants in banking and insurance, such as Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, Merrill Lynch, AIG Insurance, Washington Mutual, and many more. These were very big names in the US banking industry. They can also ruin the economies of countries and bring them to the brink of insolvency. Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain, and Iceland are some of the countries that had to go cap in hand to outside financial institutions to beg for financial mercy. Asset-based banking, on the other hand, provides stability to financial institutions and to nations even at times when financial shock waves threaten to crush everything as it makes landfall. During the recent financial meltdown in 2008, Islamic financial institutions remained resilient. According to the Dow Jones Islamic Market Financial Index, which measures the performance of around 70 Sharia-compliant stock markets around the world, the index lost a mere 2.7% in September 2008, whilst at the same time, conventional stock markets witnessed a 20% drop in value, with Wall Street crumbling into meltdown. During the Asian financial crisis in 1997, the Islamic financial system performed better than its conventional counterpart and witnessed a growth spurt after the crisis, with large segments of the population migrating to Islamic banking because of its relative stability. Islamic banking also carries the label ethical banking. The intrinsic nature of Sharia compliance in financial dealings requires banks to follow principles which define what is true, fair, just, and uphold the spirit of ethical benevolence in business and corporate responsibilities. Priority is given to the well-being of society. If you look at banks, financial institutions, and businesses everywhere in the world, we find that the profit motive is the crux of their business philosophy, the goal of their mission. Success or failure, quality of performance of business are measured by only one yardstick, and that is the size of profits they make. The only condition that they observe is to be on the right side of the law whilst being on this profit maximization journey. Ethical considerations do not really mean a thing. Let me give you an example. Tobacco-based businesses are some of the most profitable enterprises in the world today. They record extremely high profits year after year, enjoy very strong and impressive cash flows, and are ranked blue chip among blue chips by most rating standards. They use the vast amounts of cash at their disposal to big and flashy officers in order to impress banks and the movers and shakers in the business world. Banks in turn invest heavily in money and time to impress cash cows like tobacco companies. The interest of the two dovetail because both are in pursuit of the same goal, namely profits, which tobacco companies make in abundance. Whilst this symbiotic love affair blooms, we also learn from the small print in newspapers that millions of people die every year from tobacco-related diseases. Millions are in hospitals dying of tobacco-related illnesses. Medical researchers are repeatedly saying very unequivocally that tobacco use kills humans. Governments know about this, about the dangers of this addictive drug, but remain silent because of the large tax collections they make from tobacco sales. Human life, in short, is sacrificed at the altar of money. Ethical considerations are jettisoned in the race for profit maximization. Islamic banks are ethically driven because they do not entertain or support businesses whose core activity is harmful to human beings or to society. They believe that business engagements that generate profits must be from ethically supportable sources. Islamic banks, therefore, do not deal with tobacco companies, alcohol companies, casinos, lotteries, prohibited food processing enterprises, speculative financial instruments such as derivatives. These businesses generate huge profits, but from an Islamic banking perspective, they must remain outside the scope of their business for ethical reasons and ethical reasons alone. Another aspect of ethics is transparency. Justice and fair play that Islamic banks are expected to practice in their dealings with customers is important. The message of Islamic finance is very clear. Money can be earned and must be earned, but in a manner that conforms to the principles of sincerity, justice, and fairness as deeply inscribed in Sharia. As a final observation, if we try and read the proverbial crystal ball and look into the future to assess where Islamic banking is likely to be in 25 years today, my guesstimate is that it will be a financial heavyweight in all global financial centers, strongly impacting corporate business and the lives of mankind worldwide. The only downside, a serious downside, that I see retarding this growth will be us Muslims. We have demonstrated apathy, in fact, total apathy, towards a system of finance which follows the injunctions of the Quran and the Sunnah. Let us look at statistics. Total bank loans and advances taken by Muslims in Sri Lanka is currently estimated to be in the region of 250 billion. Muslims have already taken from banks loans and advances totaling 250 billion. Islamic banking has been in Sri Lanka for the last nearly 20 years, so it's not a new initiative. But the business incepted by Islamic banks in Sri Lanka currently stands at a measly 50 billion. Where did the other 200 billion evaporate to? Even globally, Cooper's estimate that market capitalization of Islamic trade and business is US dollars 21 trillion. But incepted business by all Islamic financial institutions worldwide is only US dollars 1.5 trillion. Is this a sign that Muslims of today, who proclaim that they are the privileged torchbearers of a magnificent religion, have lost their bearings and with that their iman? I ask you that question. I would like to end my talk by sharing with you a very interesting discussion I had with a local senior banker. We were invited as consultants to assist this big private bank to set up an Islamic banking unit. Prior to our visit, they conducted a survey and asked a large number of Muslim customers who were banking with them. They asked us two questions. The first question was whether they knew anything about Islamic banking. And the other question was whether they would like to migrate into Islamic banking if one was set up. The response to the first question, they all responded, in all the responses, they pleaded ignorance. Quite justifiably, people didn't know anything about Islamic banking and they confessed it. But what is interesting is the responses that came to the second question. To the next question, the response was as follows. 25% seemingly die-hard Islamists unequivocally confirmed their strong support at whatever price support to the initiative. They said, we will come, we'll join Islamic banking at any cost, 25%. Another 25% said that if the pricing was about right, they would consider migrating, which meant that if the pricing was a little higher than conventional banking, they would see no justification for migrating. The balance 50% said that the Islamic banking initiative was not a critical issue to them and that conventional banking was a perfect comfort zone from which they had no desire to move. This is the apathy that I just highlighted. Thank you for giving me your time, ladies and gentlemen. Ma salam.
By Mr. A.I. Marika, our guest speaker for today. We have a special memento to be presented to our guest speaker, and Mr. Khalid M. Farooq, Secretary of the A.M.A. Aziz Foundation, will present this memento to Mr. A.I. Marika. The next item we move on to in the agenda is, as usual, on these oration days, we have release of some books. So it's happening today also. So we have a book written by Mr. Ali Aziz, son of Marhum Dr. A.M.A. Aziz, One Distinguished Family of Moore Street in Jaffna. One Distinguished Family of Moore Street, Jaffna. And to introduce this book, I wish to invite another old boy of Zaira College and well known. He is Mr. Balasingham, P. Balasingham, who has been an old boy of Zaira College, entered the University of Ceylon, Peradeniya, from Zaira College and graduated, and after having graduated came back to Zaira College as a teacher and served in the staff at Zaira College. He has served in the media as associate editor of the Daily News and retired, and at present he is an editorial consultant at the Sunday Times. Mr. Balasingham, please introduce the book.
Distinguished members of the rostrum, dear friends, I was a student and later a teacher at Zaira College when Dr. A.M.A. Aziz was the principal. I am glad to be given this opportunity of introducing the book, Our Distinguished Family of Moore Street, Jaffna, written by my principal's children, Mrs. Marina and Ali. The Muslims of Jaffna lived amicably for many centuries with the Tamil community and were an integral part of Jaffna society until they were forcibly evicted in October 1990. They were businessmen and there were many leading Muslim families and outstanding personalities in Jaffna. But there are no separate records about them, except for brief sketches in some publications of Dr. Aziz's family. Dr. Aziz's family was a well-known family and it was felt by Marina and Ali to write about this family. Dr. Aziz had meticulously retained all his records, which have been preserved and were immediately helpful in writing this valuable book. There are chapters on the Muslim affairs of Jaffna, on the Muslims of Jaffna and the family of Sultan Mohideen, grandfather of Dr. Aziz. On his father Qadi S.M. Jabu Bakar, J.P., a leading lawyer and social worker, and on his paternal uncle Asana Lebbe Alim Pulavar, who was a scholar in Arabic and Tamil. A renowned poet and an expert in Arabic Tamil, he was well known in South India too. The only published work of Asana Lebbe, Uhal Pavani, has been reproduced in this book. His second work was not published and the manuscript is available in the National Archives. Few lead pages of this book are reproduced in the book, included are relevant family photographs. In M.S. Abdul Rahim's Tamil book on history and culture of Jaffna Muslims, he has written an article about S.M. Asana Lebbe, Pulavar. He has mentioned Asana Lebbe's works and books were collected by A.M.A. Aziz, and after his demise, the fate of these are not known. In fact, whatever documents were in Dr. Aziz's possession were known from his records. A copy of the published work, Dholpavani, is available. Also, a few chart to Kavigal. The manuscript of the unpublished work was given to the National Archives in 1967. And a preserved copy is available for readers and researchers. Many of the Arabic works belonging to his private library have been lost by way of loans, but a small collection was at Zaira College Library. The large-size Arabic Tamil tafsir of the Holy Quran, printed in Bombay, belonging to Sultan Muhyiddin was preserved in Zaira College Library. One of Dr. Aziz's pet projects was the establishment of the Ceylon Muslim Cultural Center, and they collected important and decollected important documents of historical value for the archives and the library. At Zaira, this is to conclude, at Zaira I was closely associated with Dr. Aziz. Marina was my contemporary at the Peradeniya University. Late Iqbal was my student at Zaira. I have known Ali for many years, particularly when his classmate and top journalist Manik Bisilla and I were colleagues at Daily News and at Lake House. The Jaffna Muslims are scattered all over after 1990, and many persons have started writing about the families and outstanding personalities. The book on the distinguished family of Jaffna is a useful record, and we thank Marina and Ali for their effort in familiarizing the public about the Jaffna Muslims. Thank you very much.
That's the book in English, One Distinguished Family of Moore Street, Jaffna, by Mr. Ali Aziz. We have another book to be released today in Tamil, Arivor Parvail Kalanidhi A.M.A. Aziz, by Mr. Marudur Majid, and Mr. Jamil will introduce the book.
The other book to be released today is a Tamil book, Arivor Parvail Kalanidhi A.M.A. Aziz. அதாவது அறிவாளிகளின் பார்வையில் A.M.A. Aziz. இந்நூல் 3 பாகங்களாக பிரிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. ஒன்று, A.M.A. Azizஐ பற்றி, அவருடைய வாழ்வையும் பணியையும் பற்றி எழுதப்பட்ட கட்டுரைகள். இரண்டாவது பகுதி அவரை பற்றிய வாழ்த்துப்பாக்கள். மூன்றாவது பகுதி அவர் பத்திரிகைகளில் எழுதியிருந்து இதுவரை எந்த ஒரு நூலிலும் இடம்பெறாத சில கட்டுரைகள். தந்தையை பற்றி ஒரு மகளின் இளமைக்கால நினைவுகள் என மரீனா இஸ்மாயில் முதலாவது கட்டுரை எழுதியிருக்கிறார். கல்முனை காலம் 70 வருடங்களுக்கு முன்னர் கிழக்கின் அபிவிருத்திக்கு அசீஸ் ஆற்றிய பங்களிப்பு என்று S.H.N. ஜமீல் என்பவர் எழுதியிருக்கிறார். A.M.A. Aziz அவர்களை நினைவு கூறுதல் என்பதை பேராசிரியர் கார்த்திகேசு சிவத்தம்பி. அடுத்ததாக கலாநிதி A.M.A. Aziz தேச நிர்மாண பணியில் ஒரு உதாரண முன்னோடி என சுசில் ஸ்ரீவர்தன. கலாநிதி A.M.A. Aziz இலங்கை 20ஆம் நூற்றாண்டின் முஸ்லிம் தலைவர்களுள் ஒருவர் என்று புதுடில்லியிலிருந்து வெளிவருகின்ற ஒரு பிரசுரத்தில் கலாநிதி முகமது மன்சூர் ஆலம் அவர்களினால் தொகுக்கப்பட்ட நூலில் உள்ள கட்டுரை. இரண்டாவது பகுதி வாழ்த்துப்பாக்கள். A.M.A. Aziz அவர்கள் சிவில் சேவை பரீட்சையில் சித்தி அடைந்ததிலிருந்து அவர் வஃபாத்தாகும் காலம் வரைக்கும் அவரை பற்றி பல பெருந்தொகையான வாழ்த்துப்பாக்கள் பாடப்பட்டிருக்கின்றன. அவற்றில் சிலவற்றை மட்டும் தொகுத்து இங்கு போட்டிருக்கின்றோம். முதலாவது, அவர் சிவில் சர்வீஸ் பரீட்சையில் சித்தியடைந்தவுடன் 35ஆம் ஆண்டு ஏப்ரல் 14ஆம் தேதி வில்லா பி பீஸ் டாசன் ஸ்ட்ரீட் யூனியன் பிளேஸ் கலம்பு என்கின்ற இடத்திலிருந்து சிபி மீடின் என்பவர் அவருக்கு ஒரு மிக அழகான வாழ்த்து பாடல் ஒன்று அனுப்பியிருக்கிறார். அடுத்தது கவிஞர் அப்துல் காதர் லபி அவருடைய வாழ்நாள் நண்பருடைய கவிதை. மூன்றாவது அவர் கிழக்கு மாகாணத்தில் கல்முனை பிரதேசத்தில் உதவி அரசாங்க அதிபராக இருந்த பொழுது காரைதீவைச் சேர்ந்த மார்க்கண்டு என்பவர் பற்றிய ஒரு வாழ்த்துப்பா. மருதமுனை அரசினர் பாடசாலை பெற்றோர் ஆசிரியர் சங்கத்தின் வாழ்த்துப்பா. பண்டிதர் சேனா பூபால பிள்ளையின் ஒரு கவிதை. அதே போன்று குருமன்வழி ஐக்கிய பண்டசாலை திறப்பு விழாவின் வரவேற்புப்பா. உயர்திரு ஏஎம்ஏ அசீஸ் உதவி ஏசண்டு துறை அவர்களின் பேரில் வாழ்த்துப்பாக்கள். அழகரத்தினம் புலவர் சோதிடர் துறைநீலாவணை கல்முனையைச் சேர்ந்தவர். இலங்கை முஸ்லிம் கல்வி சகாய நிதியை தொடங்கியவுடன் மக்கூனிலிருந்து ஒரு SAH என்கின்ற சுருக்கெழுத்தை கொண்ட ஒரு புலவருடைய பாடல். அது மட்டுமல்லாது அவர் முஸ்லிம் கல்வி சகாய நிதியை தொடங்கிய வேளையில் 46ஆம் ஆண்டு மட்டக்களப்பு மண்முனை கிழக்கு இந்து முஸ்லிம் மகாநாடு என்பவர்கள் அவர்களுடைய லெட்டர் பேடில் அனுப்பியிருக்கின்ற கவிதை. அவர் இறந்தவுடன் அப்துல் காதர் லபி படித்த கவிதை. அதே போன்று அவர் பத்திரிகைகளில் இளமை காலத்தில் எழுதி வெளிவந்த ஆனால் இதுவரையிலும் பத்திரிகை ஒரு நூலில் பிரசுரம் பெறாத சில கட்டுரைகள் இருக்கின்றன. அதனைத் தொடர்ந்து மிக பெருமதியான அவருடைய புகைப்படங்கள் இதில் அடங்கி இருக்கின்றன. So we are very glad to release these two books today. These books will be available for sale at a discounted price at the reception counter. We would expect every one of you to buy them. And the oration delivered today by Mr. Mareka, the printed version is also available at the reception counter. You can collect a copy when you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jamil. The next will be the presentation of the first copy by Mr. Ali Aziz, and he will present the first copy to our chief guest for today, Mr. A.I. Marika. Thank you. The book authored by Mr. Majid, he will present the first copy to another distinguished old boy who is present here, Mr. V. Ananda Sangari. We also have special copies to be presented, and I would request Ms. Rahim, who has been the past president of the All Ceylon YMA conference, to present these copies, and I request Mr. Rahim to present the copy to Mr. Trisby Marika, principal of Zaira College. I will also request Mr. Rahim to present special copy to Professor Tully De Silva, another distinguished old boy of Zaira College.
No. Come on. Come on.
Mr. Rahim will also present special copy to Mr. Shibli Aziz. Thank you. Mr. Khalidin Farooq, Secretary of the Dr. A.M. Aziz Foundation, will deliver the vote of thanks.
Respected ulamas, co-chairs, Mr. S.H.M. Jamil and Mr. M.T. Tasim, guest speaker Mr. A.I. Marikar, Mr. Trizvi Marikar, Principal Zahra College, Colombo, distinguished invitees and friends. Assalamu alaikum. Having been given the opportunity, I am indeed honored and privileged to propose the vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. I am honored since our guest speaker, Ismail Marikar, had been a good friend of mine since school days. Marix, as he was popularly known, was my classmate, together with Mr. Jamil, the president of the A.M. Aziz Foundation at Zahira during the Aziz era. I am privileged because I stand here before you as the Secretary of the A.M. Aziz Foundation and also as a past National President of the All Ceylon YMMA Conference. We still carry pleasant memories of the days spent under the tutelage of late Samim, Maruf, Sivatambi and Saldin. And as mentioned by our guest speaker, we had quite a number of youngsters who are now distinguished themselves. In addition to the two who are here, that is Marix and Jamil, we had people like Maki Hashim, Talif Deen, Amir Ali, Sapti Marikar, Neville Edrisingha, and so on. Coming now to the oration, thank you Ismail Marikar for the informative and inspiring address on Islamic banking. I am certain that after listening to him, you will no doubt agree that he is the authority on this subject. On behalf of the A.M. Aziz Foundation and the All Ceylon YMMA Conference, I sincerely thank the guest speaker, Samarika, for being amidst us this evening and delivering a useful address on this important and interesting subject of Islamic banking. I want to take, please forgive me, but anyway I want to take this opportunity to add a personal note. When the learned speaker addressed the Executive Committee of the All Ceylon YMMA Conference years ago, when Islamic finance was new to Sri Lanka, my son happened to be in the audience. Having listened to him and been convinced of the importance and future of Islamic banking, he decided to pursue this as his career. Alhamdulillah, thanks to this inspiration, he is now an Islamic banker in the Middle East. Thank you, Ismail. Our grateful thanks are due to the principal of Zahira College, Mr. Tizu Marika, and the chairman of the Board of Governors for allowing us the use of this hall. A special word of thanks to print media for publishing the article titled A.M. Aziz and the YMMA, and also for publishing the news item regarding this oration today, which was a great tribute to Marhum Aziz. I also wish to thank the electronic media for covering today's event. Finally, my thanks are due to the members of the Aziz Foundation, YMMA Conference, the YWMA, and each and every one of you for your presence and participation, and making this event a memorable success. Until we meet next year, inshallah, may Allah grant all of you good health and happiness. Thank you very much.
There is one more item that is not in the agenda. The person standing behind me, Mr. Mueed, is almost like a permanent compare for the Dr. A.M. Aziz Foundation. Every year for the last several years, he helps us in having the excellent commemoration day by his announcements and comparing. Therefore, we would like to give a memorabilia to him, and I call upon Mr. Mueed to accept the memorabilia from the Secretary of the A.M. Aziz Foundation, Mr. Khalid M. Farooq.
The books released today, thank you for the thought of presenting me the memorabilia, which I did not expect. The books released today are on sale at the entrance. When you go out, you can purchase them. Not only released today, even the earlier books are also, which has been released earlier, are also available on sale. And also refreshments are available soon after the conclusion with Salawat. We shall stand for Salawat.